Cool. Okay. Well, let's get started. Hi again, everyone. I'm Tom Moore. I work at the Mammoth Hunter Club, and today we're with Phil McRitchie, and we're going to talk about how he became a mammoth hunter, a few of his deals, and the lessons he'd like to share with those that would like to get into doing heroic big deals in enterprise and government. Phil, welcome.
Thanks very much, Tom. Great to be here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you. Now, you were just um, I'd love to just hear a little bit about what you think the current state of sales is in the market at the moment. Are people
Yeah,
closing deals? People blowing deals up? Are people being lazy? What do you think?
and I think there's a lot of exciting opportunities out there in the marketplace. I do think to some extent that sellers as a whole have got a little lazy. That they really need if to to get to a point of closure in a large deal, uh, really do their homework and really understand the value that they're providing their customers, and just as importantly, where their point of differentiation is. And I think, it's easy to say a differentiated value proposition, but it's not something that I see a lot in the market. And understanding how you're going to meet or exceed your customers' expectations and their business requirements. So, I think there's some simple steps that can be done to be able to achieve that. So hopefully we can tease that out through the course of this conversation.
Right. And what are your thoughts? Are there too many order takers? Not enough
Yeah,
closers?
I think I think that I do believe that's, people think that they get the title and then knock on a door and then ask how many people want. I wish life was that simple. And, I guess one of the areas at the moment that we're, clearly in is a challenging economic environment. So I think that while it's, while it is a tougher time, it's also a great opportunity for people who are smarter, faster, understand the value proposition, can assist companies to reduce their cost, increase their sales, be more competitive. So if you come in with understand your customer well enough to be able to come in with a point of view, I think it's actually a very, if you like, a target-rich zone. There is a lot of opportunity out there, but you just need to be smarter. And to be able to do that, you really need to understand who you are, who your customer is, and the market and what you can offer.
Right. Okay, cool. I've been lucky enough to met Phil doing a large actual deal process when you worked at IBM, but I'd love to hear about how you first got into sales. How did you find yourself in sales? And what was the first job?
Yeah, my first job was just an account executive in within IBM, working on a single account. But and I did that for or single accounts, but did that for a number of years. But then was focusing mainly on telco and media customers, and the was just in the cusp back in the 90s, early zeros, was this whole move to digital media, and it was a brilliant time. And so I ended up managing a team across Asia Pacific that went out and had conversations with publishers, sports organisations, music, entertainment broadcasters about this move from analog to digital, and really started, I think, my quest to understand what a digital world, what could be done, what the different business models were. We're now talking about, we did precursors to iTunes, ran up,
Really?
music. We ran up music proof of concepts on various telcos. We started talking to broadcasters about the benefit of digital editing suites and getting digital footage in, the years when you could watch the news broadcasts on CNN, and wouldn't change over 3 to 4 hours, right? It wasn't that wasn't new material coming in. They just couldn't edit it and get it into a process that they could broadcast. So now with digital editing and digital content, it opened up a world of opportunity. We started working with sports organisations around real-time scoring systems like the precursor to an iPad, so that they were now getting statistics. Not only could they sell it to the organisations as part of their training and coaching programs, but now there's statistics there and points in time reference around pulling together promotional content and selling additional services in around the NHL, the hockey league, Sydney. At the time, we had the Sydney Olympics. Met with the head of the
How
Chinese.
did that feel, being right on the edge?
Unbelievable. It was fantastic. It was a
Sounds like
genuine.
Steve Jobs has been stealing all your ideas.
No, seriously, it was a brilliant time when you started thinking about how do you do, how do you change the model, right? We here in Australia have the Australian Broadcast Corporation that has had an enormous amount of content. But it was either in shoeboxes, it was in canisters, films that were turning to dust, etc. And the only person who really knew what was there was the librarian. And, we digitized that content. We did something similar for a large news agency in China, which in the end was probably one of the largest digital tape libraries in the world, because they had radio, they had newspaper, they had video, and all this content was, digitized, put in a format that could be found, was indexed, and, opened up opportunities for the repurposing and, more importantly, commercial uh, uh, additional commercial opportunities to sell that content that otherwise would be just sitting in a room locked up in some uh, environmentally controlled sort of environment, so that it didn't rot further, but it was never going to see the light of day. And now that content is basically wrapped into our daily broadcast, because people can find, if a major event happened, or a major, a high profile person passes away, getting the footage around those people and what they did, and some of their famous speeches, etc., is now, you can find it and you can access it, and you can, you can sort out the copyright so that you can, use it as part of your own programs, etc. So there's just so many new opportunities in way that media organizations, as I said, whether it was, an entertainment company, the fact that, once movies could be edited up to the day basically that they were distributed, which was never possible when you had to put them in a canister and ship them around the world, right? Now you're shipping digital video. One, it helped with the piracy of the film itself, but it also assisted with the ability to do right up to the last minute editing, and changing, an ending, because the audiences that you tested it on liked ending B instead of ending A. So yeah, it was a wonderful, wonderful time, really enjoyable. And then
And
after that,
you haven't even talked about any sales yet. It just sounds like you've been working on solutions. Well, what
well, that was,
what
yeah,
was
you got, well, once then you got to understand the demand and write up the business cases to,
right?
what investments required to be able to, as I said, do that digitization or that indexing of their workload. I mean, sorry, of their content, and then where are the new business opportunity areas where a commercials, value stream could be derived. So, um, that's one is the vision. The next one's how do you close the business case? So yeah, that was really the key to that, because there was a lot of skeptical people, and how does this work, and where, what are the copyright rules, and how do I control my, how do I not lose control of my content? And so there were many, many iterations of this over the time, but it started, I guess, a process within me, as to what is the art of the possible, and where can you create, new opportunities and new business models that you can build a business case around that justifies the expense and assist your customer.
Right. And do you find that process, which is quite an open plan sales style or a collaborative sales process, did did you find that came easy to you? Because it sounds like you just went straight into the edge with IBM.
I think it was a pretty stiff learning curve, but
Yeah.
I was thrown in the fire, so it was sink or swim, right? I had to quickly understand one obviously fascinating technology, but technology in of itself, uh, doesn't achieve much. What you need to do is, as I said, understand how it can be applied to real world outcomes. And as I said, either you always got to go back to your customer, and is it something that will allow them to be smarter, faster, reduce their costs, increase their sales, be more competitive. What is it you're trying to do? What are they looking to achieve? And hopefully there's a meeting of the minds. But there's also a good way, and I'm sort of diverting a little bit here, is to help with qualification. Because if you come in with a good value proposition, well, if you come in with a value proposition, it's only good if your customer believes it's good, right? But if you come in with a value proposition, you at least it gives you the platform to have a series of conversations around, do they see the value? Is it going to be an incremental benefit? And is it possible to make it cost justified?
Hmm. That's actually a really, really powerful sentence. First thing that I found really, really powerful is a series of conversations. A lot of young representatives or sales reps, or even founders, aren't ready to have a series of conversations on how long it can take. And two, um, everything you keep saying is about uh, benefit to the customer in a business case versus a proposal. So that's the way I like to look at every deal as it needs to be a joint business case, and if it does, then we both win. Versus, hey,
Yeah.
here's a quote or here's a proposal. Now, um, it's the stiff learning curve. I'd love to dive a little bit deeper on it. What parts of the stiff learning curve as being an account executive did you pick up quickly, and what parts did you struggle with and took a bit of time to master?
Yeah, good point. Look, I think just getting the structure in place and how there's a lot as a initially as an account exec, there's a lot of knee-jerk type activities that come with the territory, but it's really taking a step back and trying to understand what your strategic plan is, and don't let the noise sort of bury you. And I think that was probably one of the biggest learning curves that I got. Stop chasing your tail, and then extract yourself, set up some time, and really give some thought about what is it that you want to achieve through the course of the next quarter, the next half year, the year, etc. Where do you want to go, and where do you see yourself having really adding value? And coming back to having that plan and working your plan, and understanding it. It's not just obviously the larger the deal, the more often, and not always, is, there's a lot of complexities around who's, you know, how do you, one, put a value, get acceptance around a value proposition, is there budget? What's the approval process? What's the timing? Who's the actual decision maker? Who's just somebody who ticks the box, etc. So just trying to work through the machinations of that whole structure, I think again was another part of that learning curve. Is it's not, as you say, it's not just a walk in the office door of some one of the employees and the customer in, and put a contract on the table and said, how many of these would you like? So I think that's a big part, and just really setting out what it is that what is your strategic objectives, and then what are the ways and means that you're going to get there. So and you win some and you
So was
lose
the
some.
hard bit getting used to taking that step back and planning it properly and just taking the time to do it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, most people, I think human nature is a knee jerk sort of, oh yeah, I've got to get on and do this. I've got to, I've got to sell another, 50K this week. Otherwise I won't hit this target or whatever. That's important, right? You've got to keep feeding yourself and your family, etc. I think that's important. But there's also, what is it really? What is it around a big deal that I need to do? What are the foundation elements? Where do I think this is going? How do I ensure that I've you know the value that I perceive is also valued through the customer, and having the right people and the right processes to get to closure. I think we talked
What were you
before
good
this
at?
interview.
Like,
I think there's a great quote from uh, Sun Tzu, who wrote The Art of War, around a strategy, and a strategy without tactics is the slowest route to victory. But tactics without a strategy is the noise before defeat. And I think there's a lot of tactics out there. It's the strategy that you need to really focus on, and that is I think that art is something that, to be fair, is very is hard to get your head around, and I think is a step that a lot of people, just out of expediency, seem to avoid or miss, or find too hard. And my advice to sellers out there would be, you've got to spend some time and trying to understand what that strategy is, and where that value and where the differentiation is, and how you're going to close that business case. Because otherwise you're just going to be resigned to to the knee-jerk type components, which don't normally work in a large deal environment.
at all. That's really helpful, Phil. Now, what was something that just came naturally to you? What were you in your first sales role? Were you just great at? You didn't need much help with.
I think it's just the inquisitiveness, mate, and really trying to understand. I think naturally inquisitive, and try and understand how, what motivates people, what motivates companies, what are they trying to achieve, how they're trying to achieve it, and personal goals and objectives of your customers. So yeah, I think that part was relatively easy. It was then and it came naturally. The next part was, well, how do I take that information and do something productive with it, and turn that into, something that I can do? And, just trying to understand, whether it's the industry, or it's the current economic environment, or, the position within a company, and who's moving and who's not moving, and where their strengths and weaknesses are, and what the market's doing at the moment. So it's then trying to take that personal data and wrap it into context of business context, that hopefully helps your customer achieve their objectives, you meet your objectives, but does it in a way that you've got, as I said, especially in a large deal environment, uh, a point of differentiation. Because if you're just fighting on price, it's a race to zero, right? And some people do. It's how many do you want? And you want 110, I'll give you a discount. But if you're just fighting on price, you get nowhere in the end. In a very mature marketplace, as I said, and where there's very little in differentiation, yeah, it's just a race to zero. Whereas, I think if you're looking at, some of these larger deals, hopefully there's an investment that's challenging people to achieve more. So, I think it opens up a lot of opportunities to the sellers and to the organisations they represent, in ways to assist their customers, to get out there and compete in the market.
That's really, really helpful. Getting down to pricing differentiation is a race to zero is a very fantastic point, especially when you're doing large scale enterprise deals. So let's get into some of the deals.
Yeah.
So I'd love to take this opportunity to talk about one or two of the deals that you've worked on. The deal size, what was the sequence of events, some of the things that went wrong, and key lessons learned. Where would you like to start? What's the juiciest big deal that you did, Phil, that you'd like to share?
Okay. There was one that was with a large mineral miner and mineral exporter, and we were doing some work within that organisation in a different area, but they mentioned that they were about to stand up an environment they were about to implement. There's a business business application known as SAP. I think many people would know it. It's in most of the larger organisations around the world. And their CEO wanted a single dashboard, a global dashboard that when he walked into the office of a morning, he could see on one pane of glass how this multi-billion-dollar company was operating and where he needed to focus and where he didn't, what was red and what was green. So we were given, while they already had an incumbent lined up who'd actually started putting equipment into data centers, we were given an opportunity 6 weeks to meet a target price to put the best supporting platforms together for them to meet their business opportunities. So 6 weeks for a multi $100 million deal. And we started from scratch. So they weren't able to share the document that they'd already shared with one of our competitors. So we literally walked into their offices here in Australia and then in Singapore, and on a whiteboard started writing up the scope that was required. So no documents, starting from a completely blank piece of paper. And, we achieved within 6 weeks to get contracts on the table, and we had it signed in 8 for certainly the largest deal that I've worked on.
Wow.
And that was a phenomenal effort, but one that took its toll. We were able to differentiate ourselves because rather than just sort of coming up with a fixed set of services, it was precursor to the large cloud movement today, but we did it more on an on-demand basis. They were running 6 waves through this implementation, so we were standing up kit, tearing it down. They were paying only for what they were using. We worked really closely with SAP and with the services vendor who was implementing the SAP application at the time, and really, even though they were a traditional competitor of ours, we wrapped our arms around them, and to their credit, they joined us, and together with SAP, with the software vendor and ourselves, and the customer, we would meet on a daily basis. We'd write up scope. We would go home after those meetings and then document what we'd heard. The first part of the next day's meeting was to we didn't have time to go through anything again. So we reviewed it, made sure everybody was on board with it, and then went on to the next item, and we continued. The things that so it was an exhilarating time. It was also
sounds like it.
a time when we it was a lot, literally doing 20-hour days, 6-7 days a week, and some of the lessons I learned was around team management and just the burnout, and there was burnout because it was a huge, enormous amount of work, and something that would normally take 6 months, at least 6 months, 6 to 18 months is normally the digestion for something of that size. But we did it, as I said, in 6 to 8 weeks.
Was there any oh fuck moments? Like, were there any huge complications where we were like, oh, this isn't going to work, or we're not going to win this?
Yeah, every day, man. Every day.
Yeah.
Every day. How are we going to do this? How are we going to get that done? We had a team in front, a leading team in front of the customer, and we had all, another team sitting back in the office.
How big was the team that worked on the deal? How big was the team?
20 to 30 at points in time.
Yeah.
And, this is everything from, the contracts people to the finance people to the solutioning people, delivery, everybody. And, we, from an IBM perspective, we were at the top of the risk rating. We were off the chart as far as risk was, but, we just kept, I basically said when I was asked to do it, I said, look, I'll keep going until somebody tells me to stop. And, there was a number of times when we were getting pretty close to that, but I kept pushing the business to invest because I could see that we were on the right trajectory. The customer had a genuine need for this, and they had budgets that have been approved, and so from their perspective, they were all in, and it was just a matter of who, and it was pushing the company, and it was just one of the hardest things, along with the customer. The customer was great. As I said, they were very collaborative. We got along exceptionally well because everybody felt like that, the SAP wanted this to be a success. The software implementer wanted it to be a success, and we sort of built some, the camaraderie there, and we had open conversations about, should that be your responsibility or our responsibility? And we got to, a common point, but we didn't have a lot of time to have those conversations. Very pragmatic, but it took its toll. There was quite a long trail of people who got burnt through the process, but anyway, we got there in the end. But my lessons was more around that team management. It needed to be done better. But
now,
that said,
one question
we achieved an amazing
probably
result.
asking. Sounds like it. Jesus Christ. Probably earned a few people a few houses. Deal. That's so just quickly, as a young sort of account executive or founder, how did you get a customer to give you that much time? Was it the size of the investment? Was it they already had their own team set up? Was it easy to do it? That's a lot of time from a customer in a very short amount of time.
Exactly.
How did that roll out? How did that work?
Yeah, it was a good question. We had a couple of key guys and that we were working, guys and gals that we were working with, and one, they knew their stuff, which was really helped, and we were across their brief. But then also were very willing and had the support of the organisation. I guess this is what you need, right? You have to have the right sponsorship, and we had an internal champion who was heading up procurement for this organisation at the time, who was our go-to person to help facilitate getting additional people. It's a key point, and probably worth discussing in its own right, that big deals rarely get up with unless you've got an internal champion. You need somebody within the organisation when you're not sitting at the table who will talk on your behalf and have conviction around what it is that you're doing. And so we were fortunate in this scenario that we did have that internal champion, and they managed to break down some doors where otherwise we probably would have stalled. But that, whether it's that deal or any other deal, most large deals, you really do have to identify pretty early in the piece who's going to be that person who's going to, stand by you when you're not there and your solution or your proposal falls into question.
Yeah, I think you've really articulated a point that I've never had before. I've always speak to people about an executive sponsor, but what you've really said in a really nice fashion is they need to talk with conviction on your behalf about your solution. It's not just they're sponsoring the deal and they like it.
Yeah.
They've got to be able to back it, explain it, and articulate it. Interesting.
Yeah,
Now,
because obviously there's a lot of conversations, Tom, that we're not a part of, right, as a seller.
right.
And so, if you don't have a seat at that table, you need somebody who's going to work, support you.
Definitely. Now, did the $500 million CEO dashboard work or what?
Mate, eventually it got close. But it supported major transformation
Yeah, I'm
of that
sure.
organisation. From a bunch of acquisitions to a centrally managed organisation. So, that's a big step. That is a big step. And a lot of companies, and even in days, in this environment now, is how do you become more cost effective? And I think that amalgamation of acquisitions into a coherent organisation is something that's an area of opportunity for a number of sellers out there.
Okay, that's really, 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 really cool and insightful. I find it people don't realize how hard it is to get the business and enterprise architecture to work because of how companies are built. But as you get more and more into the read, you realize it's harder and harder to do, and the people running it actually become the main challenge that you've got to be able to overcome and get them to engage and adopt. Okay,
Agreed.
that was really, 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 really helpful. What
There
what's
was
the
another one,
hardest?
mate.
Go ahead. Yeah, go for it.
Sorry, there was just another quick one that was quite interesting. We again a large but deal that we went straight to the CEO, and this again about doing your homework. So we'd done some work with a global mineral exporter, miner, and exporter, where we'd got into the use of SAP and the implementation of their supply chain. And we were able to get it to a point where they were, a lot of these financials now run off ratios, and they were this company was well off the scale, and we brought it down in line with best practice. So we then went through a number of other global miners and looked at published financials, and found another one who had a extremely high cost within this supply chain. So we did our analysis and basically said, I wrote a letter to the CEO and said, look, if we'd like to have a crack at getting this ratio down to this level.
You wrote a letter.
The benefit to your organisation would be X hundred of millions of dollars, and we were in his office within a week.
No shit. Was it direct, like literally a paper-based letter, direct mailer?
To a customer, to a CEO, and literally we had a meeting in a week.
Yeah. How much time?
And back to your point,
how much time did they give you in the first meeting? They give you a lot.
Yeah, we had most of his direct reports.
Right. Wow.
And we said, oh look, what we can do is, we'll get this ratio down. We'll use some of the savings to, customize your existing systems so that will support, that improvement in your supply chain, and the rest you back. And that went through. But I guess the big lessons learned. We managed to get that one through. That was open book, and amazing engagement as well.
From the letter to contract sign?
4 months.
Wow.
And really open engagement. But back to a point that you made earlier, Tom, was when you come in over the top of people, there's often, quite a bit of pushback, and people with agendas and don't like having the baby called ugly, and uh, you know, trying to obviously justify what's being done today. So we didn't quite get to what we wanted to achieve. We did achieve, a substantial amount, but just that the inertia within the organisation itself was, while you think, oh yeah, it's great, I've kicked it off at the CEO, then it's just getting everybody else on the bandwagon is found to be again another a challenging scenario. But again, having to help identify individual people's goals and objectives and how you can best meet them. But you can't always do it, and some people in those processes, there's some winners, some losers, and that turned into a bit of a grind. But anyway, we got there in the end. Not quite to where we wanted to be, but we got there in the end.
Still sounds like a good strategy and a good tactical play. Whose tactical play thought was it to send a letter direct to the CEO?
I guess we collectively thought, how do we do this? Because we didn't have a relationship with this CEO, right?
Yeah,
So there's
no,
no
good
one,
stuff. Yeah.
no one we could, and we didn't have, we thought it was more appropriate that we went direct, and we just thought, well, we'll give one shot at this. We'd done our homework, right? We'd really had looked in great detail and found, where they were out of alignment with global best practice, and the facts that we had, which is the reason why we got such good support, was top class. We really had done the right analysis. Our assumptions were correct, and they could they CEO, CFO could both understand what we were talking about in pretty short order, because and the fact that we had a reference, right, where we had changed from out of a line to a line best practice, was our proof point. And
Right.
that's another thing, which I guess in large sales is important, is around, having references and having proof points around where you've achieved what you're trying to set out to achieve.
Yeah, I'm seeing that more and more actually in the deals that I've been involved in. It actually gets quicker, the deal size gets larger, the more testimony that you've got. And when I first had a customer do a reference check, I thought that was a bit odd, but then it sort of started to make a lot of sense. They're spending a lot more money than you would, and you always ask your friend about the movie you're about to watch or the streaming service you're paying for. So one thing I'm really enjoying, Phil, is the level of detail around the business model or the customer problem. I think that is an absolute necessity that you need in large deals. If you don't think, or you're not curious and you don't care about the business model, the customer problems, and the relationships that sit within that business, you're probably not going to get far.
No, exactly. And really, there's no easy way to no one's going to give you a handbook when you walk into a customer and say, this is our organization and this is where the power comes from, and these are, personal agendas, and this is, it's just it's just the hard work that you've got to do, and really to find out
Yeah.
exactly what it, and, and it's something that evolves quickly. So you've got to
And
keep
it
your
does
finger on
take
the pulse.
a lot of sessions, doesn't it?
Yep.
You can't just have one or two meetings. You've got to be razor focused on, that one customer for a certain period of time.
Yep. 100%. And and that's where I think, this qualification I say qualify, qualify, qualify. Have the conversation, put it out there, understand. Like, there's no value unless your customer acknowledges it, right? You have no value unless it's recognized by your customer. And that's what you've got to constantly check. You could say, I'm great at this and I'm fantastic, and if they don't believe it, then there is no value. So that's really important. Continue to qualify, And
Mm.
if you say, well, I'm going to do X and it's going to provide Y, get somebody to agree with you. Because if it's not agreed, it's basically back to zero, right?
There's no value unless your customer recognizes it. I
Mm.
think there's a lot of people that could, from a founder perspective, that could appreciate that. Or should. So just to get into some more interesting, what's the hardest sales job you've had, and why?
I think, and I was thinking about that question, and think one of the hardest sales roles is to actually take your customers' requirements and sell them back into your organization.
that
You
that
have
sounds
to
like
be
a
the
man that's
champion.
worked at IBM.
Oh yeah, well, mate, and others. Oh, I've worked
Yeah,
at
yeah,
DXC. I've worked at a couple of
yeah.
others there as well. CSIRO here in Australia. But yeah, being able to really, you know, you have to be the customer's champion within your organization, and often that might mean whether it's the services, whether it's the terms and conditions, whether it's the risk position, or your commitments, etc. It's an evolving and a competitive marketplace, and you've got to challenge your own company as well, right? If you're going to be serious about putting big deals on the table and providing a point of differentiation, if it was that simple, you'd be doing it anyway, right?
Mm,
People would be knocking on your door. You're not. You're going out there and talking to the customer, and hopefully you are pushing your organization to be, better or more responsive or more aligned to what your customer wants. And there is a lot of inertia within the organization. Oh no, that's the way we do it. Or that's our standard terms. Or that, and they're tough conversations to have, right? And
mm,
depending obviously on the size of the deal, etc. But it often involves, your own CFO, your own CEO around, look, are you serious about trying to win this business? Because we've got to think about it slightly differently. We've got to reinvent ourselves because the market's moved. So, while we wanted, X days, normally, we might need to reduce that, or, whatever the item is, or items. But I haven't been part of a sale where we haven't had to challenge, a big sale where we haven't had to challenge our own organisation, whether it's delivery, whether it's legal, whether it's finance, just ensuring that you get your internal teams aligned and on the journey and understand what the customer's trying to achieve, so that you don't get to an oh god moment at when you try to put a contract get a contract approved within your own organization, and everybody starts saying, well, we didn't agree to this, or we can't do that. So yeah, that's often, as I said, it's even harder sometimes to sell your internal organization on change and meeting the customer requirements versus the customer. They're normally pretty relatively responsive, because they're the ones who genuinely see the value, and I guess that's what you got to do.
wow, that is an extremely well put perspective. Uh, uh, that I don't think there's many salespeople that haven't had the experience you had that would answer the question that way. Um, Getting your business to deliver value to your customer and change things to make things happen. Now, was it hard because it was new and you didn't expect it, or was it hard because it's actually just a hard thing to do, like getting people to change their product map or the way they think about contracts? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Everybody thinks, oh, well, I've got the best, this, or the best service, or the best product, or the best, the right contract vehicle, etc. And I'm not saying, if a customer says jump, you say how high, right? You've got to have a balanced view that, obviously meets their objectives, but also protects your own business. And I've seen a bit of that as well, where people are nothing more than a mailbox for, a procurement person within their customer. Uh, and who just said, well, they want us to do this, so we have to do it. I think you got to understand whether it's aligned with your own business values and the capability of your organisation, and whether it's a fair ask, and where it moves the dial forward. So simply taking like a unlimited liability position or something like that into a contract, I'd push back on. Right, I would never suggest any company do that, but sometimes that's a term that comes in, especially government contracts, and some of the large financial organisations. But there's points where I think you've got to, as I said, you've got to fight both sides of the fence. You've got to couch it best you can with your customer, and as I said, understand exactly what they want. And sometimes you're going to say, look, I don't think that's the right way to do that, or that maybe let's talk about an alternative, blah, blah, blah. But you also need, as I said, to stretch the organisation if you're serious about getting, new business, and of size. You'd already have it if if it was that easy, right? You'd already be there. So it's about trying to make sure you turn up with the right ammunition to be able to win that battle. But sometimes you got to really stretch your own supply chain, your own organisation, to make sure that you are prepared and you can meet the business objectives. So yeah, it's a two-way battle, mate.
It definitely is. I think just on that point, where I see a lot of founders and account executives suffer is when customers try to change the terms, but the terms are in place to actually drive more customer value. And that's a tricky situation to get in, because generally you can always get the business operator, or say the executive sponsor on side, but getting it through a global, say, a procurement panel is a different story. And sometimes the terms are in there to actually make it easier for a customer.
Yeah.
So that is also, I would say, pretty tricky. It's like, I sort of like the concept of a mutual success plan. And I also like to build it before I get into contracting, because generally a good thing to put in that mutual success plan is those sort of tricky terms that actually could create a value lever for a customer versus catch them out.
No, I 100% agree, mate. Think that, again, I think you've really, to win most large deals, you've got to be working together, and it's got to be a win-win. And the troubled contracts that I've seen is where one party has been, hasn't had a good, has been destroyed. And it was always going to end in tears. That contract was always going to end in tears, and it does. And so, where
and you find as the salesperson, you're sort of like the diplomat between two groups that want better terms, huh?
Yeah, exactly. You're the mediator, and that's, you just got to find the right ground. And I think you've got to keep that objective. You can't just bend over all the time and accept everything, but you've got to have some tough conversations, right? But at least, again, in that qualification, that should be part of that you continue view of qualifications. So, okay, this is around the terms. If we can get to here, is that will that be sufficient? If not, let me, it's again an iterative process, but you've got to keep that qualification going across all aspects. And it's not just, the product or the service, right? It's around the terms, it's around the price, it's around, the actual contract wording, etc. So yeah, there's a lot of components that all need to be, I guess, tabled and then discussed at various levels across the organisation, because you're going to be dealing with a lot of different parts of the organisation to get something like this up.
Wow, no, you're right. I like how you keep qualifying. It's not just one step in the sales process to qualify the customer. It's every step and every stakeholder that you're constantly
Yep.
qualifying. Okay. What what if I'm a new starter? Like, it sounds as an account executive, you went straight into open plan and collaborative sales, which is extremely exciting. As a new starter looking to jump into sales and do bigger deals, what would be your top sort of 3 lessons that you would give to them?
Yeah. The first is, really getting underneath the what, the why, the how, of your product. So what is it that you're selling? Why do you sell it? Where do customers generally see, value? And then how do you deliver it? How, where have you met and exceeded, your objectives in customers or in implementations there within the organization. So really getting a good understanding yourself. The next one would be to understand the market. So what's the market doing? Is it mature? Is it established? Is it in decline? Or is it in growth stage? How big is the market? What's the size? What's where does your customer set sort of sit within that market? So really getting a good feel as to, what are the drivers that are impacting customers in that market segment. And then I think the third one be understand your competition. So who are you competing against? How are they, where are they successful? As best you can understand why. And so if you understand basically what your arsenal is, what the market's doing and where your competitors sit, then you can try and work out where's your niche within that market, where's your sweet spot, and how can you differentiate yourself. So that would be the 3 areas that I'd suggest you get.
That's
And do your homework. Seriously, again, keep coming back to the same thing, but genuinely do your homework. I don't know. Do you
yeah,
agree, Tom?
I really like the last one. I've seen too many reps focus on intent-based tools and analytics and looking at what people are searching and clicking versus reading the annual report of a company for the last 10 years and seeing where they are in the business cycle and where they are in their transformation, for example. Like, I have no idea why people don't read it. It literally will tell you if they've got the
Exactly.
cash to spend, if
Exactly.
they've allocated it, and if they're in the market for it. You don't need to read
Yep.
an intent tool to see what a HR director is clicking on. You can see literally what they've allocated in the budget if it's
Yep.
underutilized.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a great point,
blows
mate.
my
And
mind. No one does the Warren Buffett annual report. Genuinely
yeah,
does it. I just
and
blows my mind.
a lot of them do updates, not only the annual general report, but do updates to the market, right? And that are sort of quarterly or, and it's normally a presentation, but it does it exactly as you stated. It states where they're investing, what they want to achieve in the short to medium term.
Yeah.
It's a great tool to be able to, as I said, help refine your own value proposition or how you might approach that
Or,
customer.
yeah. If you want to see, like I found, if you're selling to listed businesses or government, is just go to the earnings call. You can hear read the transcript of an earnings call.
Yeah.
You'll find out real quick if they're in pain or they're not on track. It's really not that hard. Like it's yeah. So I really like those 3 lessons. What's like we're sort of in a bit of a downturn. If the American dollar keeps rising, we'll probably actually cripple the Western economy. But um, you know, what's the one lesson you would give to a sales rep competing for big deals in a recession?
Yeah. Look, first up, don't get dejected and don't, think that it's going to be too hard, because in any recession, companies are looking for opportunities, smarter, faster, reduce cost, increase sales, be more competitive in the marketplace. So this is where, again, coming back to a value proposition or a differentiated value proposition, do your homework and understand how you can, change the game for these guys, because they're still in business, right? Obviously. And they're looking for ideas to improve. You can make somebody a hero, right? If you come and implement an ability to, reduce cost so that the margins go up because they can do it more effectively. This is where reference cells to come in. But well, like, where have you done it in the past? Why are you saying that you can do it? De-risking. Risk is an important part of this. People are looking for benefit, but obviously also more attuned to risk. So I think it's the proof points that you really need to focus on as well. Why are you saying this? Why are you saying that you can achieve X, Y, or Z? Why are you saying that you can, they can be, faster to market? Why are you saying that you're going to reduce their costs or increase their sales? And, reference cells often in that area, and having somebody who's maybe in an aligned or similar industries is willing to talk on your behalf is often, I think, key.
Mm.
And or the other alternative is you put some of your own money at risk. Your some companies are willing to do that, others aren't. And that's, well, I'll achieve this result, and if I achieve this result, then I get paid.
I like it. I like the sentiment of they're still in business and they're looking for smarter, more focused opportunities. And I also like it's the right time to gamble if you're in a good cash position to acquire ground. Okay, fantastic. What's the one thing that you think a big deal hunter needs to have in 2023? Now, if I wanted to become one, what's the one thing I need to have? Is it curiosity? Is it
Yeah, I was about
relentlessness?
to say that, mate.
Yeah.
That would be my number one on my list would be curiosity. You got to be searching every conversation, every bit of research you're doing. Why are they doing this? What's the market? Who else is doing that? You know, Look at it in everybody which way, upside, 360-degree view as to what's going on and why they're doing it and where your value is. And, convince yourself first that, there's something there, some value that you've got, and, um, you know, uh, and then understand how you're going to substantiate it. So, and again, it's just how do you build that point of view with enough data points that gives you confidence to be able to walk in there based on all the research you've done and gives you the ability and to some extent the invitation. You're not gonna win too many hearts, or your reputation is not going to stand up if you waste people's time.
Mm.
If you just walk in, oh, let's have a cup of coffee, and yeah, look, of course, there's let's have a cup of coffee type conversations, right? But then there also needs to be the pointed, well, this is what based on our coffees, this is what I think I can do for you, and that's it's about valuing your time, valuing their time, and really trying to take everything that you've learned and
Mm.
and put it in a format that's going to show the best side of yourself, your company, and your value proposition.
Hmm. I really, really like that you're showcasing that you've got to be curious to the point where you can showcase a customer a new strategy or an improved strategy as if you're part of their team. Like
Mm.
I've been really thinking about your business a lot, and we think we could help you win this business or improve this business with this solution.
Yep.
I
Yep.
think that's
And
really
that's
missing.
that's
It's like
a yeah,
the
exactly.
curiosity has to turn into action, and you've got to be a little bit bold. Otherwise, you never really ever have the right conversation. You
Correct.
can be completely wrong. I've been completely wrong. I've gone straight to a customer and said, "You should do this with this," and you get this outcome. And the response was, "We thought that was a good idea 3 years ago, and we tried it, and it didn't work." but let's have a real conversation about what our actual problem was and what we found out doing that, and see if you can help us with the next part of it.
Correct.
Which I was a little bit taken back the first time that happened.
Yeah. No, that's a hunt. Well, mate, that's 100% right, and that comes back again to qualification, right?
Yeah.
Because you might think you've got the greatest thing since sliced bread, but the customer doesn't agree with you. As you say, they've already tried that path, they've already failed, and unless you know have a different way to avoid them from failing again. But you know, even that gives you, you know, the customer sees that you're thinking, that you're trying to understand their business, you're trying to understand where you can add value. And back to your point, exactly back to your point, it often opens up another door. That's a great idea, but I don't think it could be applied here, but it could be applied over there. Or if you just tweaked it, it might, you know, that might better resonate. Again, you know, that they're the qualification question. I mean, sorry, conversations that you constantly need to have. And yeah, you know, don't write War and Peace and think everything needs to be, you know, every I dotted and T crossed. Get in there. You know, it might be 80% done, but start
Mm.
floating it. Start building a bit of momentum around it. Build it. But
No,
you know, don't waste, you know, like, as I said, you know, you're never going to get it perfectly right. But if you've got it, you know, if you've got it 80% right, you'll get people's interest and you'll be able to refine it or
yeah.
qualify out. No, we're not
Yeah.
interested. Thanks. Thanks, Tom, but no, not this time. See you later.
Yeah. Champagne and razor blades there. What I think people miss with curiosity is it's not just reading and analyzing and studying. It could also You can also be curious by action. In the military, we call it recon by fire. You can do
Yes.
reconnaissance by looking, but you could also do it by just acting and seeing what gets shaked out. And I don't see enough people do that. I don't see enough doing it on purpose. You know, I don't know what's going to happen if I send this CEO a letter, but I really have nothing to lose. So
Hmm.
let's see what happens.
Yep.
It could have gone a different way, and you still could have ended up with an opportunity.
Yep.
You never know.
No, exactly. Exactly, mate. And I think that's a really valid point. You know, giving it a shake, showing that, you know, there's some intent there. You know, you've got to earn your stripes, right? You need to earn your stripes. So that's part of, not just being disruptive, right? Being disruptive for a reason and, you know, with some background to it. And then exactly as you said, see what resonates and what doesn't resonate, and then refine and expand, or, you know, further refine, and just keep the lines. You know, people are interested, sorry, are willing to talk to people who add value. And that's where you've just got to keep on coming back and saying, oh, look, I understood what you said, giving it some more thought. How about if we structured it this way? Does that better align with, you know, your objectives or your time frame or whatever it is that, you know, and objections are great, right? And again, that's, you know, don't people shouldn't walk away. It's probably in every bloody sales book, but people shouldn't walk away from objections. You know, that's an opportunity.
Yeah, it's almost if you don't have one, it's not as fun.
Exactly. Well, and you don't really read it. But then I always, if I go through a meeting and no one says it, you know, like just nods all the time, I I I take that as a failure because they're not bought in to what you're selling.
Yeah, it's happening more and more too with remote conversations. So
Mm.
what you'll find is I'm trying to teach people this at the moment is that someone will get on the the phone at the end of a remote conversation because of the time. People now are more restricted to meeting times than I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
Um, and they'll say something that sounds positive or neutral. It'll be neutral, and they won't give you time to respond to the 7 questions that they've asked in the one. So, like
Yeah.
I've started to teach people, like, so what do you do to respond to that? Because you've only got a minute. What I've started to do is, why are you trying to detract from the conversation? That's what
Mm.
I say back to it. And people don't know what to
Yeah.
do. They're like, I don't know if it's really appropriate to ask me 7 questions with 1 minute left. Do you want to pick one that's the most important to drive value? And like people think
Uh,
that that's really confrontational. It's like, no, like this person is purposely trying to derail the conversation but appear neutral. That's
yeah,
some bullshit. Like, so
yeah,
there's no, like, if you think about it, like as a CEO, I sit there and go, well, we've wasted 55 minutes and you've just nuked the end of the conversation. So I
yeah,
act a little bit differently to a salesperson, but I just really ask a real blatant objection question back and go, what's your one question? Because we've only got time for one,
yeah,
which will drive the most value. And two, why are you trying to detract from a conversation that's being quite successful? And I find that, you sort of have to be a little bit more creative now that um, there's no common courtesies that are played in a remote meeting like there would be face to face.
yeah, yeah. Agreed.
Because in
You
a
know,
face-to-face meeting, you still got to like you generally shake someone's hand and go, "Thank you for your time," even if there's
yeah,
no opportunity. You don't do that on a call. It's lost
no.
a personal approach. So
Well,
objections can actually be quite hidden, harder to
yeah.
see.
Well, I signed a couple of $100 million worth of business during COVID without a single face-to-face meeting with a customer. And
Mm.
if you told me before COVID that was possible, I'd tell you was, smoking pot or something, right? Impossible to be done. But yeah, it's a different dynamic. But again, you got to seek feedback, right? You got to keep testing, your value and your topic, and is it understood and does it resonate? So, but you're right. You got, and sometimes you got to be challenging, right? Does that, and be quite bold? Does that,
Yeah.
we talking, are
Unfortunately,
we
I'm
on,
always described as challenging or an acquired taste. But
are
uh,
we aligned? Are we both, are we on the same page? Does it resonate? You got to, some real open questions, right? Not yes and no answers.
definitely, you got to, yeah. You've really, really got to spend the time to understand what people are thinking and feeling and making them feel safe, especially in a remote environment, because they'll come veiled. It's much easier.
Yeah,
There's less common courtesy. Um,
absolutely. And you can't look around the room, right? And you can see, good sellers, I think, can, sense, people's demeanor
or
in
you
a
can
meeting
you can
and
feel it, even
yeah,
remotely.
and
You can
feel it.
feel it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think, yeah, it's made it very tough, and you got to try and do it through, screens, etc. But again, it's, I guess it's around trying, then you've got to, I think, be a little bit more pointed and get a reaction, to refine your points so that rather than broad sweeping statements that anybody could sort of,
Mm,
nod to, get to some very fine points that will force a conversation, if that
mm,
makes sense.
mm. That's very. It does make sense, and it's very helpful. So, I really appreciate your time. What I've taken from today, Phil, it's great to have such a mammoth hunter on the call who's even done hundreds of $1 million of deals remotely, which is an achievement to say the least. Is that one? You've got to be curious, and curiosity is at all steps of the process. It's not when you
Yep.
first meet someone. Two, you're always qualifying. So you're always constantly qualifying the customer, and you've got to be okay with going back to zero as you go through the process. And last but not least, which is one of my favorites, is that it's not real value unless a customer recognizes it.
Yep.
Because doesn't mean if it doesn't, if the market, if it's not valuable in the market, then it's just not valuable, and that's why it's a market. And I think that's something to really, really, really forget quite quickly as a founder or sales rep trying to do big deals. Doesn't matter if the customer doesn't agree or believe it.
And I think we all get caught up in our own PR, right? And we lose track of, uh, you know, sometimes about what it is that, how the value is perceived. But exactly, yeah, we've got you just get out there and just make sure that it's realised, or you're talking to. vapor,
Mm,
unfortunately.
no.
But yeah, no,
Um,
that I'm happy, mate. I had a great conversation. I really enjoyed the time. We've dealt a bit in the past, and I got a lot of respect for what you've achieved. And yeah, I think this new this new operation, mate, is one challenging, but two, I think can provide great value because it's a tough world out there, and if people can give you a leg up and how to be better at what you're doing, I think it's fantastic.
no, I agree. I think if we can help people do more heroic big deals, they'll get through the class system a lot faster. And I think more people can do them. And they shouldn't be relying on sales automation tools to speak to
100%
someone.
agree. 100% agree. I don't think AI. I don't can't see AI immediately replacing a salesman, so or person. So no,
Not at all. Not at all. Well, mate, thank you for your time. It's a pleasure to have you on. And if you would like to engage Phil as one of our coaches, you can follow along with one of the links that will drop at the bottom of the video. We are looking for people that want to do big deals, work courageously to drive value with customers. So thanks again. And thanks again, Phil.
thanks, Tom.